Welcome to We Question and Learn. This is Tom Pysz. We are celebrating our 18th year here on the air at WQLN Radio. We are also on the WQLN website, wqln.org/We Question. And we're celebrating 18 years of having wonderful, wonderful people on the air. And today I'm very grateful to have been able to arrange an interview with Brenda Sandberg. And welcome to the program. We're glad you're here.
Well, thank you for having me, and congratulations on 18 years.
Yeah, it's been a long time. And we're grateful that we've been supported by the audience all these years. As everyone, or maybe folks from out of town may not know, Brenda Sandberg is the executive director of the Erie-Western PA Port Authority. Boy, that's a long name.
It is.
Yeah, and that's okay because it's somewhat... explains what you do to some degree, but I'm hoping that we can spend this half hour talking about everything that's going on. But let's talk about the superstructure of the Port Authority for folks who may be listening from California or Florida or other parts of the world via our internet broadcast. So what is the Port Authority relative to Northwest Pennsylvania?
Well, the Port Authority is an independent municipal authority. And one of the things that I have learned in working with many authorities across the Great Lakes and across our great country is the fact that every port authority is a little bit different. So I'll dig into a little bit about what the Erie-Western Port Authority is. We were created in the early 1970s, basically as Pennsylvania's only Great Lake port. In relation to when the St. Lawrence Seaway was going to open and provide international access into the Great Lakes. So we were created in the 1970s. We are, as I said, an independent municipal authority. Mm-hmm. Our mission is to further industrial, commercial, and recreational opportunities on Presque Isle Bay here in Erie and the adjacent waters. So we do have the authority to go beyond Presque Isle Bay. The Port Authority is comprised of a governing board. That board, it has 11 individuals, 9 of which are appointed by the mayor of the city of Erie. 1 is appointed by the governor of Pennsylvania, and 1 is appointed by the secretary of Pennsylvania DOT.
That sounds very appropriate. So it's balanced among those folks who have a direct interest in our great city and our port. That's fabulous.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah, it seems like this was founded pretty close to when they were, as you mentioned, building the St. Lawrence Seaway was opening up. Yes,
that's exactly correct. Yes, so, creating that new access to the Atlantic so that we have the ability to accept international shipments into the Great Lakes system.
I hate to tell you this, but I remember when they were working on that. Of course, that caused a huge amount of economic development along the Great Lakes. And let's come to Erie. Do you measure how the Port Authority affects our community in either financial or whatever other way you measure it?
We do. So, again, I participate in the Great Lake Ports Association, and typically every 5 years as a Great Lake system, because that's how we like to look at ourselves as one transportation system, we do an economic impact for the Great Lakes maritime system. But back in 2018, we asked that economic impact study pull out the numbers specifically for just Pennsylvania or Erie itself. So back in 2018, there were roughly 757 jobs that were dependent on maritime trade in Erie. That equated to about $63 million in business revenue and $22 million in wages.
Now,
pretty impactful.
Besides that, there are still there's shipbuilding, there's shipping. To what extent does this move beyond just ships coming into port?
Well, those numbers are specific for just ships coming into port and the shipbuilding. So Don John Shipyard and Repair and Carmoose, which is, does business as Erie Sand and Gravel. But that is our stevedore here in Erie and does all of the local and international shipping in and out of the Port of Erie for us.
And then there's the other spin-off, the economic effect of us having a port. And I was just curious to see if someone made the attempt to measure that even. In other words, the subsequent revenue and travel, trucking, for example.
Well, that those numbers I gave you should take into account all of those secondary
Okay.
jobs as well.
Okay, so the
So
armature,
the 700 the 757 jobs would be not only what are occurring on site right here dockside or at the shipyard, but also what they're supporting as far as trucking and rail and construction and other secondary positions in the community.
We're talking to Brenda Sandberg, Executive Director of the Erie-Western PA Port Authority. How many employees are involved in your organization?
So we own roughly 475 acres on Erie's bayfront. So a lot to take care of, and that is taken care of by roughly 13 or 14 full-time individuals.
That's amazing. And when you say 400 plus acres, that's all the facilities that you operate?
So those are all the facilities that we own. So
okay.
we begin on Erie's east side with Erie's Land Lighthouse. So that is the property furthest to the east that we own. And then the property furthest to the west that we own would be Ravine Park and Ravine Drive. That goes down to Ferncliff and the Erie Yacht Club.
Oh, that's amazing. And you manage that with, once again, how many employees, please?
Yeah, roughly 13.
That's still amazing. Now,
13 full-time, and then we, of course, we gear up for summer and have substantially more, seasonal positions.
Obviously, yes, you're working more diligently, so to speak, or more frequently because of the warm weather for obvious reasons. Can't work on the ice, I
right.
guess.
So in addition to just being a maritime port, and again, when I said we're a little different than some other Great Lakes ports, in Erie, in the community, we also have ownership of marinas, campgrounds, the Bicentennial Tower, bike ped paths, free public boat launches, a whole slew of different recreational opportunities that we provide for the community.
That was a lovely snapshot you just gave us, because now when you think about it, you are a public facility. You're operating almost like a park to some degree, but even more extensively with boating and all the other waterfront activities.
That is true. Yeah, on Port Authority property, we have over 1,200 boat slips, recreational boat slips that are leased out. And they're not all leased out by the Port Authority. So we do lease property itself to marinas and private developers for their use and development.
Okay, can we talk about your board? You have a board of directors, right?
We do, yes.
Yep. And how large is your board? And you mentioned folks responsible. How many people are on that board now?
So we have 11 board members.
Okay, that's what you said, right?
And then, of the 11, 9 are appointed by the mayor of the city of Erie.
And
then
and
again,
who would
one
those
by the
people?
governor.
Yeah, who would those people be? Community leaders, maybe folks invested in the waterfront. How does that work?
Well, they are political appointments, and so we have a wide range of, high-level corporate individuals, whether it be from Erie Insurance or UPMC. We have individuals in the construction industry. We have real estate developers. We have bankers. So we have a wide variety of appointments.
Now, in your job, you were the Director of Economic and Community Development for the city of Erie. Did that for a couple?
I was previously.
Yeah. I'm just trying to frame for people what your experience is, because I just feel you have a very important job and a very critical job, and you have a lot of responsibilities. But going back prior to that, you also were the Chief Executive Officer of the Erie Downtown Partnership.
I was. That's going back several years. I was employed by the city and then went over to the Erie Downtown Partnership and operated that for several years, and then went back as Mayor Senate's Director of Community and Economic Development.
Yeah, then you were a zoning officer for the city for a while, or for a good while, actually. What I'm getting at...
I was, even prior to that. Now you're dating me.
Yeah. Well, I'm just trying to give people a snapshot of what skill set you have in order to manage or execute your career as executive director with the Port Authority. So it's not like you're from out of town, so to speak, but I'm going to let people know that you and I graduated from the State University of New York system. So we're going to let people that you know that you are imported as I am. So it's a pleasure
Yes,
again. Yeah. Yeah. So with all that said, there are projects, duties as assigned, but you only can accomplish this via funding. And where does your funding come from?
That's a great question. We are a governmental agency, but we are not directly supported by tax dollars.
Hmm.
So when I mentioned that we have roughly 475 acres,
Mm-hmm.
a good portion of that is under lease. So the vast majority of our operational budget is secured through those lease payments. And then in addition to that, we do operate a marina and campground and boat storage and, of course, Erie Bank Great Tuesdays. So all of that provides additional revenue that 100% provides for our operational budget.
That's hand to mouth, no tax dollars. That's amazing to me because I would suspect
No.
that there would be some tax dollars involved because of all the, well, why don't I put it bluntly, because of all the economic development you present to the community through the Port Authority.
So we do. The tax dollars that we do have that are involved are basically competitive grants that we secure to do some of those projects.
Okay.
So where if we were a regular business and we were operating, let's say, the Lampe Marina or Lampe Campground, typically the profit from that operation would go back into that facility. However, we have a number of properties that do not generate any revenue that are community assets, such as the bike ped paths or the path at the top of the bluff, free public boat launches, Liberty Park. So unfortunately, the funds that we receive that may be profitable from other portions of our businesses go to subsidize those free public assets that we provide. And so then that requires us to go out for grant funding to enhance those assets.
That's fabulous. Once again, and as you mentioned before, all these ports, and correct me if I'm wrong, along the Lake Erie, the Great Lakes shorelines, you're integrated in some way. Am I right?
We are. We do participate in the American Great Lake Ports Association together. So all of the public ports, we get together 2 or 3 times a year to discuss challenges that we as a system, and again, we look at this as a full transportation system, much like you would look at an interstate system. And then we look at how we can grow that system and, of course, what the challenges are and how we can help each other through those challenges.
Before I go too far afield, then you're very familiar with the volume, so to speak, that comes in down St. Lawrence to the Great Lakes, particularly now down to Erie as you go through Buffalo. So there's some huge numbers there, I'm guessing, that you folks are involved with. Do you get a snapshot of that?
We do from time to time. Unfortunately, those numbers are, on the decrease a little bit, and of course, COVID hasn't helped much.
Right.
So many of the Great Lake ports are seeing year-over-year decreases in their volumes. I'm happy to report, though, that Erie, with the exception of a little dip during COVID, we have been seeing since about 2014 year-over-year increases in what we are handling here at the Port of Erie. So for us in Erie, there are some great trends for the Great Lakes as a whole, especially those that were deep in, handling coal or coke products. Those have obviously started to fall off due to some of the environmental issues associated with it.
Yeah. And then I remember years and years ago watching them load locomotives on ships at the Port of Erie. Are there other industries that are involved or that you are involved with relative to the port?
Yeah, right now, one of the greatest growth factors for us is actually wind energy. This year, we were able to accept 4, if not 5. There was one in just the other day. Vessels that come in from Brazil, delivering wind energy components. And this was the first year we were able to handle the actual windmill blades themselves. Previously, we just handled the towers. But coming in from Brazil, again, through the St. Lawrence Seaway into the Erie port, and then, shipped over via truck to their final destination.
I've seen those on the road. I thought at one time there was a trucking company here that moved those blades. and I'm not going to name it, but I do remember seeing those parked not on the bayfront though. So where did they come in on the bayfront?
Well, the vessel comes right into the Mount Fork terminal,
Okay.
and then right on Erie's Lower East Side.
Yes.
And then from there, they are trucked to their final destination, typically out the East Side Connector, and then to either Interstate 90 or 86.
Okay, that's why you don't see them coming up 79 or anything like that through the maze, so to speak. It's a fascinating thing to see, and I suggest if people would like to see what trucking one of those things looks like without driving down to the bayfront, just watch that online. It's and it's nice to hear that Erie's part of this wind movement, this environmental movement to take advantage of wind power. That's great.
It is, it's a growing field, and the good thing is that what we're learning is that windmill blades are only good to that company for roughly 10 years. So it is something that will have some long-term sustainability as they, will look to not only increase the number of wind turbines in the area, but also we'll have to get into the maintenance of replacing those blades on a, every decade.
Having driven up to London, Ontario numerous times over a couple of decades, as you go along the North Shore Lake Erie, you just see hundreds of these giant windmills turning.
You do.
You do.
Mm-hmm.
And you also, if you go down the New York State Thruway east and you get over the border into New York and you look up the hill there, probably closer to Dunkirk, Fredonia, you see a huge windmill farm being developed on that hill up there as well. So this is a big business, and it has a good effect for us because we're able to take those components in here at the port.
That's true. They're not coming into Buffalo. They're not coming into Cleveland. We have been competitive and been able to allow those to come through the Port of Erie.
Okay. What kind of projects are you working on now? Anything that you'd care to, talk about? Maybe a new project? What's happening now?
Sure. So probably one of our most noticeable projects that recently occurred was the reconstruction of the dock wall on East Dobbins Landing here in the city of Erie.
Yes, great.
So that dock wall was under great stress and had some threats of failure. So we were able to secure roughly almost $2.5 million to replace that dock wall. Again, that's another one of those that really doesn't generate any revenue for us, but it does provide for a great community asset. We were allowed to increase that space about 15 feet to create new land, which provided the sidewalk area and the free public access that is, required under city ordinance that had not been there previously.
We're talking with Brenda Sandberg, the Executive Director of the Erie-Western PA Port Authority. We're glad you're here today. Now, relative to the comment you just made, are you folks absorbing that cost? Sidewalks, construction, the wall, the greenery, so to speak. Is that all your responsibility?
So yes, that was our responsibility to construct, and again, we were able to secure grant funding to construct that. However, long-term maintenance is absorbed by the authority itself. Okay.
Your benefit to the community is that you do all this work, but you're also spending that money here in Northwest Pennsylvania to get the work done. Am I close? Is that correct?
Yes, very, very true. We have been very successful in being able to award competitive bids to local contractors to do the vast majority of the work that we have been doing over the last several years. So whether it be that project on East Dobbins Landing, currently the project on Lower State Street, which is reconstructing the dock wall that holds up State Street.
Yes, that's a good project, right?
It's a good project.
Yeah.
And then replacing the wooden boardwalk that had kind of fallen into some disrepair. It had met its useful life. So we'll be replacing that on both sides of State Street for kind of a whole new face as the Bayfront Parkway project gets under construction and will open in the next few years. So that is also our project as well.
Okay, now that you've revealed that, I think a lot of people are confused as to who manages, who funds, and who makes all this great new stuff happen on the Bayfront. So the Bayfront project is yours. The Parkway is yours.
The Bayfront Parkway project, no. The
That's
Bayfront
not
Parkway
yours.
project
Right.
is PennDOT. Yeah,
PennDOT.
so that is the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation. That is their project, and they have the state has supported that project. They have been very successful in acquiring federal funds for that. However, the Port Authority, of course, being an adjacent property owner, we are doing projects to support the DOT project, and one of which being the State Street project I just mentioned.
Yes.
Another is the West Front Street project, so the area between State Street and Sassafras Street at the Convention Center. There is a small two-lane road that's there that many people don't know exists on the north side of the Bayfront Parkway. We will be reconstructing that into a full road with connective bicycle and pedestrian paths as well. So that notice to proceed was issued in November, and we do anticipate that they will be underway this winter as Mother Nature allows.
Absolutely. So you just brought up another interesting topic to me. I love to bike, and you're making accommodations for people that like to run and bike. Am I correct?
That is true. Yeah, we have almost 6 miles of bicycle and pedestrian walkways that are under our maintenance, under our control and maintenance that have been developed by the Port Authority. So, and we're looking for increasing those connections all the time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what are the deep, dark secrets of the Port Authority? There's some things that people don't know. And I say that with a touch of humor, as you know, but there's probably a lot of activities, and maybe something will come to mind to you that folks will say, I didn't know that. What part of the Port Authority is not generally published, I guess? What is something interesting about the Port Authority that you think is not generally well known?
Well, I'm not sure if it's not well known or not. Again, knowing that I live and breathe it every day, that's a little bit difficult of a question.
Yeah.
But two things, and both of them actually relate back to security. So, so we do have our own security force that patrols the Port Authority 365 days a year.
Mm-hmm.
And typically we utilize off-duty sworn police officers for that work.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes we'll be using private individuals, and then we'll also be using off-duty sworn police officers. So that alleviates some of the burden from the taxpayers of the city of Erie. That we have the ability to provide our own security, and then having the city police as a backup, which they have been great partners. But to that, I guess the second point would be the fact that we have been very successful in receiving Homeland Security grants for camera systems, which we know are everywhere and growing, no matter where we are. But we have been successful in putting camera systems across the Bayfront that then we have the ability to share with Customs and Border Patrol and the State Police and Fish and Boat Commission and the City Police. But those camera systems most notably did catch and resolve, I think, rather quickly the unfortunate situation that occurred where an individual went out and murdered his wife on one of the local boats.
So this security system was of great benefit to the community and the Port Authority and the customs folks. That you all
It was.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and in that particular case, and that was something we were able to report back to Homeland Security, which they were grateful to hear, that within, basically 24, 48 hours, the police had a pretty good idea of what happened due to our cameras.
I think the width and breadth of your organization is much larger than just seeing the sign, Port Authority. There's a lot involved in what you do, and you do it with a moderate amount of employees. You exercise a lot of energy. You cover a lot of acres. It's something I think people take for granted on occasion. I hope not. I hope they've learned something today about what you do. Now, you've been there for over 7 years.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah. Any outstanding story that sticks in your mind? Something good that happened relative to the Port Authority being there and available to the folks in the community? I'm just thinking you might have had a story or two that you benefited the community in some way, more directly, so to speak. Well,
we like to think that a lot of what we do is beneficial, and that's really the the lens that we put on when we're making decisions related to, what projects to take on is really what is best for the community. And that's really why we hold on to as much property as we do, because then we have the ability to, make that decision not from a profit standpoint, but from a community development standpoint. You're correct. I think, one of the things that we've noticed in the last couple of years is that, we didn't need to do a better job telling our story and better maybe mark what is Port Authority property so the community understands what is being supported, like you said, with those bike paths or free public boat launches. But really, the exciting numbers that, came out relatively recently are the environmental side of shipping. And I think that's something that doesn't get much coverage.
Yeah, that's where I was going. You have a project going on that's definitely of benefit to the community, if not the whole Great Lakes area. That is the environmental issue. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so the environmental side, there are two different size vessels on the Great Lakes. One is a seaway vessel that is a little bit smaller because it has to fit through the St. Lawrence Seaway and through that lock system. And then, you have the 1,000-footers that go on the Great Lakes. So if you look at a seaway vessel that might be loaded with, let's say, 30,000 tons of product, that is the equivalent of roughly 300 rail cars or over 950 trucks.
Wow.
So when you're talking about what, and then if you look at the 1,000-footer that is, just within the Great Lakes, that carries, maybe 62,000 tons. And that is the equivalent of about 564 rail cars or over 2,300 trucks. So when you talk about environmental footprint, really shipping is the green way to go.
Yes, relative to trying to put that many rail cars on a line and send them to Chicago or New York, for example. Well, let's talk about going west, obviously, Detroit, Chicago,
exactly.
Anything, the upper Great Lakes, Michigan, iron and all that kind of thing. This is really...
Even for us,
yeah.
Yeah, even for us, you're looking at, coming out of the upper Great Lakes, road salt. We handle, a lot of the road salt that comes in. So, if you're figuring, we bring in 60,000 tons of road salt, which is typically more than that. But let's say we bring in 60,000 tons of road salt, that would be, almost 2,400 trucks that we're taking off the road by doing it strictly through the Great Lakes system.
That's fascinating, and I hope people will remember that fact next time they go taking a walk on the bayfront near the hotels or whatever part of the east side of State Street down on the waterfront they walk through to the library. They look at the land and the businesses you support and the output of your organization is truly economic development for our community. And I hope people, when they walk down there, they realize what a great job you folks are doing. Any last thoughts? Something that's important to you?
I think we covered everything.
We did. You did a good job. Yeah. What a pleasure talking with you. Thank you for being on We Question and Learn today. We hope to have you back in the new year, and we're grateful that you and your team is doing such a great job for the greater Erie-Western PA area. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, and thank you for mentioning the team as well, because honestly, nobody can do it themselves, and I have a fantastic team behind me that helps us implement this every step of the way.
Thank you.
The assault on the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021 was a shocking moment in history. The new documentary, Preserving Democracy, explores the ebbs and flows of democracy in the U.S. and abroad, from the Revolutionary War through the current state of voter rights, and more. Watch and learn on Thursday, January 6th at 9 on WQLN PBS. Presented in partnership with Hagen History Center.
Join WQLN Road Trips as we travel to Cleveland to find out what the buzz is all about. The iconic musical phenomenon Jesus Christ Superstar takes the stage on Sunday, February 20th. Road trip participants will enjoy a matinee performance of this mesmerizing production, dinner at Sabreo Italian Kitchen, and deluxe motor coach transportation by Anderson Coach. Contact today at 814-217-6013 or visit WQLN.org.
Welcome to We Question and Learn. This is Tom Pysz. We're celebrating our 18th year on the air here at WQLN Radio, WQLN NPR, and online at WQLN.org/We Question is one word. And we have a very special guest for this half hour, and I'm really thrilled and honored to have Dr. Chris Gray, who is the founding president of the Erie County Community College of Pennsylvania. And welcome to the airwaves here. Very, very proud to have you here today.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here and share the story, the good work that we're trying to do to make a difference here for some of the students here in Erie County.
So you're new to the area. In fact, we were chatting a second ago before we started recording the broadcast. You moved here recently.
I did indeed, yeah. So I was most recently I was in the far suburbs of northwest suburbs of Chicago. So I used to joke it was on the edge of where the suburbs ended and the farms began. So I'm a farm boy myself, blue collar background, appreciate people that work hard and do the right thing, and so I feel right at home here in Erie.
And you were right at the edge of one of the major metropolitan areas in our country, and I'm sure you gained a good education from living in that part of the world. Is that right?
You know, it did. We actually, a newer term, we called it peri-urban, so the perimeter of the urban. So we took and dealt with a lot of folks that work in agriculture and said, how do we take these farms that, and we can really produce. There we did a lot in the agriculture world, really working with some of the small farms to get their products grown and then shipped in, figuring out the logistics to get them into the city. So it was kind of a changing landscape, much like Erie. The economies change every generation or two, and you've got to try to keep up and figure out how to stay relevant.
So you started your job 4 months ago?
Yeah, mid-July. Came out here mid-July. So
wow, probably a difficult time to travel and get settled to with all this epidemic stuff going on, but we're glad you're here. So without further ado, you probably had done a presentation to the folks of the county to apply for the job, and as you found out about it, what were your thoughts? What were you anticipating?
So that's a long-winded answer. I'm going to apologize up front.
No, that's okay.
I've been trying to break down education for a long time. Education is designed. It's almost a caste system. It's designed for the elite, by the elite, and designed to keep only the elite in there. Now that's certainly changing here in America, but the processes still don't serve the common person, right? Growing up I suppose the only people I knew who had college degrees were my teachers growing up. Folks in my neighborhood just didn't go to college. It's not something we did. And I've shared this story 100 times, but I think it's a great example. So I chased a girl to school who subsequently dumped me about 3 weeks in. But it got me into college, and I was thankful for that. And my teachers had always pushed me to go to college because I scored well on standardized tests and so forth. But I just assumed I'd go work in the same plant that my father had worked in, and my uncles and my grandmas and everyone, So I chased the girl. And I remember I get the bill, and I can't remember what it was, $600, $1 million, whatever it was way more money than I could fathom, right? And so I went to my mom, and I said, hey, Mom, I got this bill. What do I do now? And so my mom and I actually jumped in the car, and we went downtown to the old State Bank of my hometown, State Bank of Lincoln, and we met with Rod, who was our banker. These guys giving me a car loan, he helped my parents refinance their house. Just a good guy, right? Mm-hmm. And we're sitting there. It's a Saturday morning, I remember, and we're talking, and Rod's laughing at me and saying, well, what do you mean there, And I'm like, well, I'm going to college. And he's like, that's awesome. But I got this bill, and I need to get a loan. And he goes, well, you need a student loan. I'm like, okay, is that what it's called? He says, but we don't do that here. He goes, you got to go back to that college and look for an office called financial aid. And I share that because that's typical of many of the students that our community college here is going to serve. I didn't know what a financial aid office was. I'd never heard of that term. I didn't know what a FAFSA was. Right? I didn't know lots of this how to college things. It wasn't that I wasn't bright. It's that I didn't know how to play within the rules of the system. Mm-hmm. And so I have been working my entire academic career trying to say, how do we tear down these goofy barriers? How do we make it accessible so anybody who is willing and has the gumption to try to do post-secondary gets that chance? Now, that's hard because you're working against 2,500-year-old traditions, right?
Yes.
And much of the culture of higher education is built on those traditions. So the chance to build a brand new college from the ground up and be intentional about saying, no, we won't allow a barrier. No, you can't only do it online because many students don't have access to Wi-Fi, right? Mm-hmm. No, you can't make them wait 4 or 5 days because they're balancing caring for their parents or caring for the children with working 2 part-time jobs. We have to make a way that we can get through the bureaucracy of higher education quicker and easier so they can focus on the learning, because the learning is what we're all here for.
Excellent perspective. And of course, once they gain that degree, they can move on in life and support their family, participate in the community, and maybe even offer education to other students and friends and family.
Well, they become role models. I mean, I think the thing we miss is there's role models, right? Like, I didn't know, I can't tell you a male figure in my neighborhood that had a college degree. I'm sure there was one. I'm sure I was around them, but it wasn't a valued thing, right? Like, I mean, honestly, so there was a state school, which is a state facility for the developmentally disabled, and that's the plant that I taught at. That's everyone in my family worked there.
Mm-hmm.
Both my grandmother, my father, my 3 or 4 aunts and uncles, my brother worked there when he graduated high school. Everybody worked there. So that was kind of what you were expected to do. And you get off work about 4:30, you come home, open up the Budweiser, sit on the back porch, and complain about work. That's what people did where I was.
I have to just interject here briefly. It's a pleasure listening to you talk, in that you're one of the gang. You're a down-to-earth person. You're highly educated, and on the other hand, you thoroughly understand what would be the plight of the everyday person in Erie, Pennsylvania. I
will use every bit of privilege and voice I have to fight for the little guy.
Excellent.
Because the little guy can't fight on their own. It's going to take those of us that are in positions, and we're seeing that across Erie County. I had great meetings even this afternoon. I was meeting folks who are trying to say, how do we start to, they always say you got to make better choices. You know what? A lot of our poor kids, they don't have choices to make, right? We've got to show them that there are choices. We have to go into those neighborhoods and put the resources back in those neighborhoods. And so there are choices to make. And then if students choose not to make them, great, we can beat them up for that. But the reality is so many of our students don't have access to many of the things that those that tend to make decisions have access. So yeah, I'm a Don Quixote. I will take on any windmill I can, even if I'm going to lose. It's worth fighting. So, but our students need voices like that. I wouldn't be where I am today. I can name all the various people who stood up and made those fights for me and helped tear down barriers. So I want to do that for other folks. So
I'm hearing that you're the kind of person that leads by example. It's a pleasure to hear you. But let's get down. Good. Hey, let's get down to the nitty-gritty here. The structure that you're managing, that you're helping Erie have, this concept of a community college.
Comprehensive community college. So,
yeah. How does this work? I've seen it in other cities.
What's amazing. So,
yeah.
I think in Empower Erie did a great job of sharing this story, but Erie, Pennsylvania is the only city of its size that has not been serviced by a community college for quite some time. Mm-hmm. So in my world, I grew up with community colleges around me. I kind of knew what they did. My dad got his GED at the local community college when I was, junior high sometime. So I knew kind of what they did and what they were, but it's fascinating out here people don't get them. So a lot of the concern about the duplication or the, waste of resources, it's funny. Like I sat at one of the debates and they said, well, we don't need another college. What we need is more trade schools. And I thought, well, they don't get what a comprehensive community college is. So at the highest level, a comprehensive community college is your first 2 years of traditional college. So when you picture a college, if you picture that, we're going to jump in a car, go away for 4 years and come back. The comprehensive community college does that, but you don't have to go away. So as a result of that, you save a ton of money. You're able to stay right here, help out with your family, work your part-time jobs, whatever it is that keeps you in the area. But beyond that, we also do this technical training, career and technical education. Mm-hmm. So we prepare people to go immediately into the workforce with highly skilled technical jobs. Most of them are high-paid jobs. They're all livable wage jobs. Everything from 2-3 generations from now, you won't be able to interact with any company around here without somebody having been training or received training here at the community college. I'm thinking, from police to firefighters to everything in healthcare to manufacturing to automotive to office assistant, you name it, almost every entry-level position that requires some sort of skill, we'll do that as a CTE portion of that. So that's something that really distinguishes us from the other really rich institutions of higher education that we're fortunate to have right here in Erie County.
This is great because as you look at Erie's history I read that Zurn Industries was founded in 1898, and you get to the 1920s, you have AMSCO, American Sterilizer, and then, of course, the tool and die industry was huge in this area for decades and decades. And I always felt there was a need for a community college to get people into these well-paid technical positions, and as they get established, they can determine what they want to do with the rest of their life. I think that's where you're going with this, I believe.
Well, and you're spot on. Those technical. I mean, so I used to saying it's not your mother's factory, but it's really not. For one brief semester or one brief summer, I worked at a local manufacturing plant, and it was the old monotonous, dark, loud, dirty. I did the same thing over and over. If you walk into any manufacturing plant today,
yes.
First of all, what used to be 10 employees doing 10 different tasks is now one employee supervising 3 different computers and 15 to 20 pieces of equipment that are running that. So you have to have this incredibly high level. I mean, these are amazing machines. As we start to integrate artificial intelligence into our production, the concept that factory work is like for those that don't have skills, it's silly. I couldn't walk into most of these manufacturing plants. I don't have the skills to be able to do it. I can run a college. I don't have the skills to do it. So it's fascinating. And those fields are changing so much, and we're really, as we think about the labor shortage we're going to have, we need people in there who can be creative, who can problem solve, who can think critically, who can really help those companies maintain that high level production and continue to keep those costs down. So it's it's a great opportunity to be in Erie. We have a great infrastructure ready to go. What we just need to do is find what's that next great industry that we can attract in and bring all those jobs with us.
We're talking with Dr. Chris Gray, founding president of the Erie County Community College of PA. Well, let's go one step farther. As someone's working right now, they're in the workforce, you actually help with training, I believe. Is that correct?
Yeah, you bet. So earlier I defined the difference of comprehensive community college. We do both the traditional 2 years and we do the kind of technical training. Well, now I'm going to blow folks' minds and say, well, there's a whole other wing that community college do. Everyone calls it something different: corporate education, community education, workforce development. But we do all sorts of training. So it is not uncommon. We will, and we're not doing this yet, but we will be here within the next 6 months. We'll actually be training. So we'll go out. So as these companies, if we go manufacturing, they're going to add a new artificial intelligence, a robot to do something. Now you need one of their workers who has some basic understanding in automation, some basic understanding in logic controls, some basic understanding in fluids, which are hydraulics or pneumatic, right? Mm-hmm. So what we do is we actually prepare. We have training ready to go, or we can customize that training to their particular equipment. Then we either bring their employees for a couple of days out here to learn on our equipment, or we'll go to their plant and teach them on theirs. So we do that kind of training. So as those companies want to grow, they need a highly skilled workforce. We become the education experts. We are really focused on that teaching and learning. And so we'll be out there with those companies saying, what do you need to do? And then we also do a couple different other ways. So beyond just that specialized training, we'll also offer coursework in, there's some production OSI 3000, and I may have the acronym wrong, but it's lean manufacturing. It's a very specific way that is used throughout lots of our manufacturing. We may offer a class in that. And then different companies say, hey, I need to send 3 people from this department, 2 from that one. Then they come together and learn this specialized skill that they're going to go take back to the workforce. But there's more. Typically, community colleges, and I'm not sure Erie County will do it because we already have such a rich social structure happening and lots of other good agencies doing this work already.
Yes.
Typically, community colleges also do your GED training. They run your small business centers. They run your English as a second language. They do communiversity, so they'll do, I was joking with a client earlier, joked about he has to call his granddaughter every time he wants to learn how to do something on his phone. Sometimes we'll even do kind of lifelong learning classes for just the general community to kind of pick up those skills. So we really are the community's college. While people tend to think of us just on the credit side, and that's where we generate credits either through like the transfer education to go on to Barron or Mercyhurst or Gannon or community college. Or whether they get an applied degree and go right out and become a welder or work in an automotive shop or work in a manufacturing plant being an industrial maintenance technician. But we also do a lot of other, and that's that lifelong learning, whether it's geared for the workforce or just to better yourselves.
I can see that you're really not trying to duplicate services that are provided by many of the organizations in the community, but it's not beyond you to partner with them. Would that be an opportunity?
Right before we jumped on this call, I actually just wrote a letter of intent to partner with a brand new organization here in Erie County that's trying to create a community center Absolutely. There's no sense in duplication of resources. I think some of the concern about the addition of the community college was that, and I don't think they're wrong. We don't need to build a Taj Mahal campus. We have lots of great infrastructure around here. We have lots of other great institutions that focus on certain elements of education. I don't need to jump in there. What I'm focused on is how do I provide services to students so they can make Erie County a better place to live and work. So they need job skills. And when I think job skills, don't think the old-fashioned like they just need the technical skills. No. We need AI is getting ready to change the way we exist and function in the world. Mm-hmm. If we think how quickly the computers changed things in the late 90s into the 2000s, that's nothing. That pace of change can happen even quicker as we really start to harness the power of artificial intelligence. So we need people at all forms of work to have those skills and be ready for that. So, yeah, I mean, I think so. What we're going to constantly look to partners. So I'm going to look at a couple things. Like when I hear, hey, we have a need for certified nursing assistants. Okay, great. Mm-hmm. My first question is great. Who else provides that training? Mm-hmm. Right? Mm-hmm. How do people get that right now? And that's actually something we're working on right now. We found out it's provided a couple places. A lot of the long-term care facilities have actually put their own training together because there hasn't been an education expert who jumped up and said to do that. There are some of the private for-profit institutions that are doing some of those areas. But again, I'm looking at accessibility. So I'm not just saying just because someone else offers it, there's not a place in the market for us. I want to say, can someone who's living paycheck to paycheck or scraping by, can they get it and not incur, hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loan debt for a job that's not going to pay enough to bring that back? Just in conversation today, a need for early childhood educators. And I said, hey, that's great, but we've got to be honest in that industry. We're asking these people to go get a 2-year degree. And in fact, the state I came from, Illinois, is considering requiring a 4-year college degree to teach in a preschool or a day school. The reality is those folks are making barely above minimum wage in most states. That's not a livable wage, right? Especially if you're going to couple on education, they're going to have to make an investment in themselves. So there's a lot of different competing factors. You think about that, but I'm not going to go out there. I don't need to go out there and compete, right? There are enough opportunities for us to help build the educational fiber here in Erie County that we can plug those holes quite easily.
And that's how EC3 fits in, fills the gap in Erie County and Erie's community.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Exactly. Now, you're brand new to this. It sounds like you got your hand on the steering wheel and foot on the throttle. As you're speeding down the road, and I can tell you move pretty quick, you're very astute relative to where you see the needs and how to determine what they are. Where do you see all this going? I know you haven't been here that long, but I think you may have taken the temperature of the community already. You already are aware that you're going to fill gaps and supplement and help folks that are already doing some of this work. As you move, what do you see for the future for EC3?
Well, I think we're going to be a giant educational partner within a decade. I came from a county, had about the same, slight bit more, maybe about 5% more population in McHenry County back in Illinois. Mm-hmm. And we had about 8,000 students we served every year. So I believe that EC3 will be serving 5,000 to 6,000 students once we're up and fully going. It's going to take a number of years to build these programs and figure out where our more long-term locations are going to be. But again, I don't think you'll be able to interact with anyone here who won't have been touched by EC3 through their programming and offerings. We're going to start doing dual credit. So we know that. Here are things that we just know. Any student who can get any post-secondary credit while they're in high school. So if they get any college degree, 1 college degree, 3 credit hours, 10 hours, whatever it is, they stand an 80% chance of completing a certificate or a degree in college. Why would we not bend over backwards to get every single student in Erie County that opportunity to earn that? Let's teach them. Let's show them they can be successful. So I really think you're going to see us integrated within the K-12 districts, doing a lot with dual credit. You're going to see us integrated within the great receiving institutions we have here. Mm-hmm. Had a great conversation with the local chancellors about wouldn't it be neat if we created a program where we really took some of these students who need some more time to kind of learn some basic study skills and so forth and feed them directly into a in-demand program that they would even save spots for EC3 graduates. So we're gonna really fill those holes academically. But I think most importantly, you say what can the community look at with EC3? And I've said this a number of times. You can measure my success in the number of jobs we create, not the number of degrees I produce. The degree of the benefit to the individual student that will change that student and their family's life for a long time. The jobs make this a better place for all of us to live and work, and that's what our primary focus needs to be: is give people job skills so they can go get those in-demand, high-paying jobs they can thrive, they can see themselves succeeding, they can raise their families up, they can buy homes, they can invest back in our community. That's how we pull Erie out of this change that we've all gone through in the last generation and make Erie great again. And I mean broadly when I say
broadly, yeah. Now that you're opened up, how many students do you have now?
We're serving about 250 students
Already.
Yeah, we had to keep adding classes because students they came out of the woodwork. We were overwhelmed. Again, I started on July 14th might have been my first day at work.
Yeah.
I was employee number 4.
Wow.
And we started classes September 1, and we had to add classes a couple weeks later, and add more classes a couple weeks after that. And that's something unique about the community college. Our classes will start at all different times. Unlike the traditional model where you jump in a car and go away, community college serves the community, right? That's not true. Unfortunately, when you get laid off or you decide you want a career change or you're finally at a point where your children don't need you every day, when you're ready to go back and say, I've always wanted to try it, I can't say, well, come back next September, right? Hey, I'm glad to serve you in 9 months. That's not realistic for the type of student we serve.
Right.
So it's kind of all over the place. So I think that you'll see that number continue to grow. I think we'll serve another 250 here in the spring, not maybe even more. And then that number is going to start to grow exponentially next year because we will be adding more academic programs in some of those specialized areas. We're in the process of trying to figure out where those are, and then we'll be hiring more and more faculty, full-time faculty, adjunct faculty. We're up to, I think, employee number 43 started this week. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, with that,
part-time faculty.
Yeah, with that question, with that number that you just offered, how is all this funded?
Well, so the funding varies by institution. I can tell you certainly here's how we're funded at Erie County Community College. So the traditional model was a third. The concept of a community college says if we're going to make education accessible to everyone, there's a huge financial barrier, right? So the third promise was the state would cover a third, the local cover a third, and then the student would cover a third. And that model generally holds true. So that's why our tuition at $160 a credit hour is significantly lower than any private institution and most state institutions. And so that model is we receive funding from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. The legislature and the governor both have been very gracious and understand the need for the community college. And we've had huge support from the county government. Even the incoming county government, County Executive-elect Davis, certainly understands the necessity for workforce development. And so while he shared some concerns about having a community college, he was more concerned with the fiscal responsibility, the need to not duplicate. Now that he understands the mission of where we're going, you've seen he's been fully supportive. So we get a lot of support from the county government, both the county council. We're losing a number of really strong champions. Kathy Galkemper has been an amazing champion for college.
Yes.
Carl Anderson is a champion.
Yes.
Scott from down in Courier Rest, I'm blanking on his last name, Rest, R-E, I can see it, Restader or something to that effect. They've all stepped out and taken on different roles. But I think as people start to understand our story and how we're going to make a difference in the local economy, I think we're going to continue to see that great support. We're going to keep that tuition low. We've got to. We'll be accredited here in a few years. And the moment we're accredited, we'll be able to access federal and state grants. And you know the poverty that we certainly have here in Erie County, both the inner city poverty and rural poverty.
Yes.
Many of our students will be able to attend the college totally free. And it will actually, if they're eligible for Pell Grants, a federal program, they'll actually have money to help take care of some of that transportation costs or help to make sure that they can not have to work that second part-time job to make things meet. So there's a lot of federal dollars out there available that once we're up and established, we'll be able to access and really help our students make a difference in their communities.
How are you managing the brick and mortar?
So I'm going to tell you, I have a firm belief that every student should have access to education within 30 minutes. So now for a farm boy like me, that means I get in the car and drive. Where I'm at 30 minutes and then 30 miles. But that's not the truth for Erie County, right? If you look at in the second legislative district of county council, Councilman Horton, who is a huge proponent and also a student, will tell you 1 in 6 of his constituents don't have access to a private vehicle. So 30 minutes for somebody who's relying on the bus means we're going to have to be down in that Lower East Side, right? We're going to have to be near downtown. People can tend to get here in 30 minutes. But when I'm talking to somebody out in West Springfield, they need access to that. So the brick and mortar, I don't know. Right now, we're offering classes at St. Ben's down on the Lower East Side. We're offering classes down in Corey at the High Ed Center. We're at the Skill Center at everyone calls it familiarly the Voc Tech. It's the Erie County Technical School. And then our science classes, we partnered with the Regional Science Consortium at the Tom Ridge Center. We're using their world-class research labs to do our science classes.
Fabulous.
So I think I see some iteration of that. Now, whether those exact locations or different locations, but I don't think about it in terms of brick and mortar. I think about it in terms of access. How do we make it so we can take one more barrier away from students? So I'll be honest, I grew up in a town kind of like Corey. Coming into Erie is a big deal when you're from a town like that, right? There's things in Erie that are culturally just different. Reverse that. Someone who lives in Fairview or Mill Creek, going down to Corey, that's going to feel like a really small town for them. So how do I put education accessible to them? So culturally accessible, physically accessible. How do I put it in places where if I can take away that fear or the newness, right, the apprehension, I might be able to get them to focus on education. So you'll see we're going to look for partnerships and for classes, lots of different places throughout the county.
Not virtual, but in a way, physically virtual, where you have different opportunities in different parts of the county for all the people that need it. That sounds like a good plan.
Actually, and online virtual. We were surprised our online enrollment. We offer a number of our courses online is really high. We think that's still a reaction to the COVID outbreak. But absolutely, yeah. I mean, about a third of our courses right now that we offer, our students are all engaging online.
Fabulous. Well, that could be due to the fact they have difficult jobs, sometimes split hours, split shifts, 2 jobs.
Oh, my goodness, yes.
Yeah.
Talking to some of our students, I talked to a grandma who's raising her grandchildren and still has to work and is trying to squeeze classes around that schedule.
Yeah.
Right? I talked to a business owner who is taking a business class because, frankly, she's saying, I can't afford to keep paying this accountant. If I could learn to do this myself, I could save X amount of dollars.
Yes.
Another set of students, we have these two of the three, they're 3 twins. We have 2 of them are taking classes. They were taking a gap year because of COVID, and they decided to go ahead and try out the community college. And so the students are as diverse as our county is.
And going along those lines, age is not a detriment. You're not looking at the dotted line that fills in the age. In other words, you could be 50, 60 years old and participate.
That you just described our student. Our average student age is in the upper 30s, almost 40.
Really?
Absolutely, yeah. I have a student in my mom's age is taking class. One of our oldest students, the same age as my mom, taking class. You'll see that's not uncommon in community colleges.
No, it's the concept of a fresh start. Yeah, a concept of a fresh start from an industry that may no longer exist and an opportunity to better themselves. And I think a lot of people appreciate that education just to improve themselves. And then they learn that they're available to fulfill a mission at some paid organization or even help with a nonprofit organization. Yeah, a lot of opportunities.
I'll hold off on this. This I used to say with confidence. Now with the Great Resignation, I'm going to say it differently. Historically, there's an inverse correlation between the economy and community college enrollment. Typically, when you see a recession, community college enrollment skyrockets. Because all these people got laid off. They've got to go retool, get new skills to go be employable. Now, I wonder how the Great Resignation and the movement that we have right now, that basically folks that were in the entry-level jobs have moved up to mid-level jobs. A lot of our baby boomers have retired, so we have lots of these open jobs right now. I don't know what impact that's going to have, but I wonder. I think, and let's hope we don't have an economic downturn. Although, unfortunately, that tends to be pretty good for community college business. So,
well, in another aspect, if we do have an economic downturn, you will be providing a good number of skilled workers and intelligent folks available for the workforce. I'm hoping.
Absolutely, and not only that, we work daily as it is with almost all of the companies. I feel like I've met every company here in Erie County. That's not true, but we are that committed to partnering with companies, understanding what are their workforce needs, what do they see coming on the horizon, how can we better prepare students so that they're ready to walk in day one and immediately start to increase productivity for these local businesses that are already, in such a tight market, they can't spend weeks and months trying to retrain somebody. They need to jump right in there and get some production. So
absolutely. Well, the sad part of this program is the part that I say I'm sorry we're out of time. So we'll keep in touch with you, Dr. Chris Gray, founding president, Erie County Community College of PA. We'll find you with new questions as you get more settled in and as things progress into the future. We wish you a great amount of success. And of course, that reflects on as a benefit to Erie County because you'll be putting some great people into the community with a good education.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'd be remiss. I know your listener base. I'm an NPR listener myself.
Thank you.
I know lots of your listeners out there are sitting there with lots of industry experience or graduate credentials, and we'd love to have you come be part of our story and jump in and help teach some of our students so we can prepare them all to make Erie County a better place to live and work.
I hope folks get online, find you, and reply to that query and your request. And thank you again very much for being part of the program.
Thank you.